We live in a dangerous world. The gods who built it vanished, leaving behind their instruments that aimlessly reshaped the land. These ancient relics harness an unknowable force we call the Anthem of creation. But the Anthem refuses to be controlled.
If you followed my channel for any length of time, you've probably worked out that I'm very passionate about BioWare games. This legendary development studio have created some of the greatest and most memorable stories in the history of the industry, giving us a wonderful Star Wars RPG in Knights of the Old Republic, delving deep into the world of elves, magic, darkspawn and dragons in the Dragon Age series, and reaching for the stars in the extraordinary Mass Effect. It's been more than a decade since BioWare have released a game under a new IP, and Anthem was highly anticipated by many, many people. The studio have been much maligned by audiences and critics alike over more recent releases in both the Dragon Age and Mass Effect series, and often for good reason. These sequels have a lot to live up to against the glory days of Mass Effect 1 and 2 and Dragon Age Origins, which are some of the defining games of our generation, and Anthem has even more to prove. The landscape of gaming has changed significantly in recent years, and we're seeing more and more live service games entering the market with the promise of long-term commitment from the developers and publishers. Anthem is BioWare's first foray into the always online space, but how have these developers managed to fare in this new age of gaming culture? It's a difficult space to navigate for developers, with serious competition from games of similar ilk like Destiny, The Division and Warframe, as well as a battle for screen time against the now ever popular Battle Royale genre. But BioWare have been bold in attempting to enter this space, as previously it's been their single-player narrative focus and deep level of storytelling that has garnered them such success from their previous games. There is a lot of negativity throughout the online community regarding Anthem. Reviews from journalistic publications and influencers alike have been way below the high expectation of this studio, and it's not all sensationalism and undeserved outrage. However, I want to give my take on Anthem and take a deep look at this brand new IP from my favourite developer. So let's get started. The entirely fictional and mythical land of Bastion, where Anthem takes place, is a culmination of the studio's previous works. With a combination of the futuristic science fiction worlds of Mass Effect, juxtaposed with the fantasy D&D style Dragon Age. When you look over the wide landscape that surrounds your home, Fort Tarsus, you can see an otherworldly vista peppered with the ruins of Shaper technology, as well as the overgrowth of flora and fauna, and in the upper atmosphere, a neighbouring planet and moon which just screams sci-fi. But even the name Fort Tarsus conjures imagery of castles and forts of fantasy worlds, and the architecture within the fort is more similar to fantasy than science fiction, and it creates this incredible juxtaposition which extends from the world itself into the gameplay and combat, and the 4 javelins used by the player throughout the game. Rather than develop classes more along the lines of the soldier, engineer or the sentinel in Mass Effect, the javelins you pilot in Anthem are much more akin to classes from Dragon Age or other classic RPGs. The Ranger serves as your standard fighter class, the Colossus is the tank, Interceptor is the rogue, and the Storm is the mage. And I must say, I love what BioWare have done with the development of the javelins, as each has an entirely different playstyle. You can see where the developers have evolved from the stilted and slow combat of both Mass Effect 1 and Dragon Age Origins, throughout a long and tumultuous journey to arrive at the fluid and vertical combat of Anthem. And verticality is strong in the map that BioWare have created as well. It's a nice change from what are usually relatively flat and two-dimensional open-world maps with some mountains scattered to give the sense of verticality, but the developers here have really done an amazing job in creating this 3D space. Even the underwater caverns are something not often seen in other games, but unfortunately this map is a lot smaller than I would have hoped, and often void of interesting things to see and do. And there is a lack of different biomes that would have really made this world stand out against its competitors. It's a lush and often beautiful landscape to traverse, but it's all very samey, and apart from some areas infested with scar hideouts or the ruins of once impressive castles, the terrain is often forgettable. In relation to story, there's also some incredibly deep, very BioWare lore in the world of Anthem. The Arcanists, Freelancers, Ciphers and Sentinels all have their own fleshed out and interesting backstories, and bits of lore are scattered throughout the world and throughout the missions as well. Different factions vying for power and a history of warfare mark the land with painful memories and grudges, and as a freelancer it's your job to try and rid this world of evil and return your people to once held glory.
For the Legion of Dawn. If I'm right, this last location should be the one we're hoping for.
As a freelancer, your job is to protect those in the fort from danger that lurks outside the walls. However, after previous events have gone awry, the reputation of the freelancers has been tainted, and it's your obligation to help the citizens of Fort Tarsus in order to return yourselves to glory. And yes, the internet was quick to compare this to the struggles of BioWare itself and the development of Anthem, after the fall from grace of Mass Effect 3's ending and Andromeda as well. But, and as much as it pains me to say this, the studio haven't returned themselves to glory or delivered a truly engaging story with Anthem. There are some highlights for sure, but each mission isn't incredibly memorable throughout the critical path. Unfortunately, this game suffers from a huge case of repeated mission objectives and a lack of variation in the way missions play out. Obviously, this is a looter shooter and I'm no game designer, so I'm not sure how this could be improved, but missions either require you to stay in a certain area while information decrypts or downloads, or tasks you in collecting echoes to silence relics, which gets incredibly tiresome, and I wish they were able to do something else to make these relics and the idea of the Anthem more memorable, because I think it's some well-designed lore that could have been expanded upon much further, so players could really learn and understand what the Anthem of Creation is all about. There was a mission towards the end of the game that really stood out and included a couple of different objectives, including a puzzle that I thought was truly a breath of fresh air, but it was one of its kind and begged the question of why more variation was left out of so many missions. I'll give the developers credit, however, for a couple of aspects of the game's main missions. Firstly, the cutscenes are gorgeous, and I'm glad they put these into the game and didn't entirely rely on in-game storytelling or radio chatter. I only wish that there were more cutscenes in more missions, as these were some of the best moments of the story. Secondly, the quests on which you embark to help some of the NPCs in Fort Tarsus are a great side activity and actually have pretty interesting stories to uncover. I particularly liked Matthias' story, and his character grew to be one of my favourites within the fort. I had a lot of fun in Anthem, but I will admit it has some serious flaws, some of which will be difficult for the developers to resolve, at least in regards to the main critical story. But there are great moments here. It's just difficult to not compare this story to BioWare's past, which is littered with brilliance and some of the best stories told in gaming. BioWare coined the phrase "Our World, My Story" to describe how the player would interact with the storytelling between missions, as your time in Fort Tarsus is spent in first-person perspective without other players and allows you to talk to the numerous NPCs in a more traditional RPG-style experience. But it's a jarring experience at times. Within missions, you're in a squad of up to 4 players, but it still seems as if you're the only one embarking on this quest. The NPCs speaking to you throughout these missions still treat it like you're the only one in the game world, and apart from a couple of times that I recall, your Javelin appears to be alone in the story's cutscenes. After returning to Fort Tarsus after the completion of a mission, it's particularly frustrating when you're in a squad with friends. Each person goes into their own instance where you can talk to NPCs and open up new missions and visit the forge to equip new gear, but you'll probably just have to stand around waiting until everyone is ready to go for the next mission, and unfortunately you can't just complete one mission and then travel freely to the next. This, I think, is a big misstep. It would be really great if players could just complete a mission and then open up the map and choose another one to undertake, travel there within free play and begin questing again. In pre-release trailers, we saw the Striders act as a mobile base to use to gear up, and even this would have given a more immersive feeling to the way the story works and how you interact with it alongside friends. Being removed from the game world after every mission is complete and sitting through multiple loading screens to return to Fort Tarsus, and then another to visit the forge, equip new gear and prepare for the next mission, takes you out of the immersive game world. I look back to one of my favourite games, Borderlands, in comparison, where players can just complete a mission and then immediately begin another before having to actually turn these missions into the quest givers to receive experience and progress the story. I would have much preferred to experience free play this way, because right now I don't feel that this game mode has much purpose, because it's an instance of its own and a pretty empty one at that. There's no option to set waypoint markers for everyone to follow, there's no way to know where world events will occur, and there's very little reason to actually explore in free play outside of collecting resources and finding collectibles. We'll see over time how BioWare combat this, with their promise of expanded content to roll out over the next few months, but unfortunately the base structure of the game and how missions are undertaken is something that I would assume would be difficult to entirely overhaul. Right now though, there is much to be done to improve the structure of missions and free play alike. One thing BioWare can't seem to get right in their new games is the villain. In Mass Effect, we got the incredible Saren Arterius, one of the absolutely best villains ever to grace the medium, who was three-dimensional, had motive and flaws, and was an enemy that you felt compelled to stop at any cost. We also had Sovereign, who pulled the strings from afar. In Mass Effect 2, we were introduced to the brilliant Collectors led by the Reaper Harbinger, a devastating enemy who seemed impossible to overcome, and one that had literally killed you in the opening sequence of the game. And in Mass Effect 3, you have the Reapers and the Elusive Man, villains for hugely different reasons. These villains are all entirely different to each other, and all compelled Commander Shepard to fight back against them for different reasons. But then in Andromeda we got the Archon, who we learned little about and had no reason to want to defeat him, except that it was the main story requirement, and in Anthem, unfortunately, this trend continues. The big bad in Anthem is just that, the big bad. We don't know why he does what he does, and we don't know who he is or anything about his backstory. We just know that his faction, the Dominion, are the bad guys. I really wish that BioWare had have done more to develop the character of your nemesis, and give you higher stakes and a more personal reason to want to defeat him and his army. There are glimpses of it early on in the story, but there isn't enough development of your enemy to really empower you to want to stop him. The other enemy factions also aren't really expanded upon much either, other than in a couple of missions, and BioWare should have spent the time to develop these enemies throughout the game. One of these factions, the Scar, are a strange insect-human hybrid race that scavenge the world of Bastion, but there is little development other than this. I would have loved to learn more about the Scar and even infiltrate their main base or something along these lines, to delve deep into what is some interesting foundational lore. BioWare have created a foundation which screams to be expanded upon, and I really hope that this can be achieved going forward. I hope that EA give them the support they need to continue developing content over time, despite the poor reception at launch. Destiny suffered similar issues at launch, and Activision gave them time and support to really make something out of the franchise. I just hope EA can look past the Metacritic score and their share price and give BioWare time to make Anthem a truly great game. Okay, so I may not sound too positive on Anthem, and like I said, it pains me to try and look at this game objectively and point out its, let's admit it, many flaws. But I really love the moment-to-moment gameplay, the traversal, the flight, and the satisfaction of the combat. There's no denying that flight in Anthem is unlike any other game. BioWare have really nailed the way it feels to launch into the air and to travel across the map, and it's something that really doesn't get old. And neither does the combat. I spent a majority of my time in Bastion as an interceptor, utilising my agility to get in close to enemies and cause huge amounts of damage. The nimbleness of the interceptor allows for super fast movement, with a triple jump and a triple dash at your disposal, but can also be equipped with an array of both close quarters and ranged attacks which will complement the way you prefer to play. However, when choosing another javelin to enter combat with, it's like an entirely different game. This is a testament to the teams who have developed the combat systems in Anthem, as each class really does feel different to control and is suitably equipped with satisfying abilities and armaments. The primer and detonator mechanic is also something that just left me smiling throughout each firefight, and that satisfying crack heard when you detonate a prime target is something which will never get tiring. I think though, the game should do more to actually make the player aware of the primer and detonator mechanic, as friends I was playing with didn't even realise this was a thing, even quite far into the game. There's a ton of information in the game's codex, but for some reason this basic combat system is never explicitly explained. Questing with friends was a lot of fun as well, although the difficulty curve doesn't really push you towards truly cooperative builds and doesn't require huge amounts of tactical nous. The game is much more fun and challenging on hard, although admittedly I haven't experienced the game on any of the Grandmaster difficulties as yet, so it will be interesting to see how complementary builds affect the success on the higher endgame difficulty levels. The loot grind is pretty satisfying too, but I'm sure some may disagree, and your mileage will vary. But you get significant loot drops in most missions throughout the game, and there's barely a time where you return to Fort Tarsus after completing an expedition where you don't have a bunch of new gear and weapons that will potentially increase your javelin's power. The satisfaction of unlocking my first masterwork weapon was pretty awesome too, and it felt decidedly more powerful and effective than the weapon it replaced. It's to be seen how this satisfaction will continue in the endgame, with the promise of legendary weapons as a reason to return to Bastion after completing the main story. Despite bugs and connection issues, a serious lack of some features, a somewhat half-baked story, and a game that seems to have an identity crisis between being a multiplayer looter shooter and a single-player character RPG, I had a great time playing Anthem. And I'll continue to explore the world and complete the endgame activities because there's still a lot to do, especially if BioWare can deliver satisfying content moving forward. But Anthem is not a flawless game. It might not even be a great game for some. But for some reason I really enjoyed it. It resonates with me and I'm excited to keep playing and returning to Bastion. The developers have created a foundation for what could one day be an absolutely fantastic game, and I truly hope they're given the resources and time to ensure that one day Anthem can be just that. But I think that's the problem with the current AAA gaming space, especially those focused on games as a service and shared worlds. There are some great moments in Anthem, but I don't know if that's worth the 6 or 7 years it took for this game to be developed. As I said earlier, I love this developer. Their games have made a massive impact on me and are an important memory throughout the years I've spent playing video games. So it's hard for me not to just be able to speak positively about this new IP and sit Anthem on a pedestal with the studio's previous games. I've recently replayed both Mass Effect 1 and 2 and been deeply moved by the near perfection of these titles, with this sense of agency and urgency, brilliant writing of narrative and characters alike, and a story and world I want to learn more about. And I wish BioWare was still the developer they once were. As much as I hope Anthem continues to develop over time, I would much prefer more narrative role-playing experiences instead of ongoing services which are designed to repeatedly bring players back and fight for their time. There is a lot to enjoy in Anthem, but also a lot that needs improvement, and I'm cautiously excited to see where they take this franchise. Until then, the developers have their work cut out for them to continue to improve their new world, and I hope that they can succeed. Thanks for watching. If you've made it this far, I can't express how much I appreciate you sticking around for my first full game review. Please let me know in the comments what your thoughts on Anthem are, and what you think the future of this game may entail. I'll be down in the comments if you want to talk Anthem, BioWare, or any other game. If you're enjoying my content, make sure you like and subscribe, and feel free to share this on your social media platform of choice. I have more content coming soon, so follow me on Twitter @Direckt Gaming so you can stay up to date with the channel. Until next time, peace.